Hello everyone, let's do this. In today's part of this tutorial we are going to create our buttons. And in addition to doing our buttons, we are also going to change up some of the colors of the UI to kind of make it more nice looking. I will show you the colors that I have decided to use. And at the end of today's episode, I'm going to show you. Let me just show you. So at the end, it's going to look like this. So if I go into build, we will have something like this. So we will create in Clay, we will create these buttons, and these buttons will have callbacks that we can trigger. So for now I just print out the name of the button when I press it. Same goes for these buttons, and also for these buttons on the right. And in the center here, as discussed, we're going to have the lunar lander game. Yeah. So let's get started. I'm going to back up a bit. So we have the code from the last episode. And I'm going to bring up my reference. So beginning, as I said, let's change up the colors a bit. So these are the colors. I will print them and put them here. These are the new colors that I've decided, and with this we're going to change some of the variables. I'm also going to kind of copy paste in my comments I've made. So font IDs, and down here we have the element configurations. So let's see, for the for the text we are going to use instead color text. Color text. There we go. And over here, let's see. Yeah, here we're going to use instead the variable color background, color BG. Same goes for this color BG. Let me just make sure everything is correct. And all of these color lights will be changed to this new variable name I have. I just kind of redid the naming scheme for the global variables. Yeah, so let's just make sure we don't have any more color. Yeah, that's good. Let me zoom in a bit just to make sure you can see the code better. I also changed up the font naming scheme to be this. So just again, I removed the all caps underscore and just did upper camel case instead of all caps snake case, I think, or is it? I'm not sure. Whatever. So these are the new naming schemes, and down here then we're going to have to change. So this will be font ID normal 16, and this will be font ID normal 24, font ID bold 16, font ID bold 24, font ID italic 16, font ID type. And there we are. Oh, I messed up. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any other changes to the code. No, this looks good. Yeah, so let's start up the button. So we want the buttons, let's create the first button in the first sidebar here, the sidebar 1, which is the sidebar to the left. And the way you kind of do buttons in Clay is that, or at least the way I did it, is that you have a rectangle, and inside that rectangle you have text, and then you attach some on hover, and from there you attach the callback for the interaction. So Clay, just as before, and this will have a Clay ID. Let's just call it button template. Oh, leave it parentheses. Yeah. So the layout, and just to keep this sort of code more breeze, I will create a variable for this and call this button layout config. We will create this variable soon. And other than that, of course, the rectangle. And the rectangle will have a color. So let's just do color button for now. And I also did a corner radius on this to make it look, in my opinion, kind of more nice. And we will use the 8 pixel border radius. Let's see. Yeah. And in here, just as we did last episode, we're going to create some text. So Clay text, Clay string, and this will be like, let's say, trigger big for now, just something to test. And Clay text config, and again I will create this reusable variable called button text config. Yeah. So we need to create these two variables now, the button text config and the button layout config. And I think we will actually put a big B on that one, since it will be global const. So under the element configurations, we can create the first one, which is the Clay text element config, and this one was called button text config. It will be a element config like so, and the font ID, I've decided to use font ID normal 16. Oh, sorry, actually we will use 24, and of course the font size will match, so 24, and the text color will be just color text. Yeah, so we have a problem here. Let's change this to match the new name scheme, like so. So that's the button text configuration, just as the other text we have configured before. And now let's create the Clay layout config for our button. So button layout config. Create some space. So the first thing is the size of the button, and so the size will be, in this case I will do a width and let it grow to its whatever max size it's allowed to grow to on the width, and on the height I'm doing a fixed 50 pixels. Oh, sorry, I kind of messed this up. So, like that. So sizing is equal to, and sizing is once again just a struct with width and height. A Clay sizing axis is a union of either, it's a union of kind of size percent or size min max. Yeah. So size in fixed tells it to be 50 pixels, and size in grow tells it to grow to whatever maximum size. And after this sizing, we can do child alignment. So this will be the alignment of the text. And the alignment of the text will be on the X. It will be center. And on the Y, it will also be center. Let's see, I'm making sure this is correct. So clean align Y center. Like so. And so the child alignment is a struct that takes in the X and the Y alignment. And these are the ones you can pass. So left, right, or center. So we are doing center on both the X and the Y. Let's move down here. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Let's see, it's complaining about something. Missing a, yeah, of course, semicolon here. Cool, so let's compile this. And there we have our button. Pretty simple, just a rectangle with the color, border radius, and inside we have our text. And both are using these two variables, so the button layout config and the button text config. So one thing that we want to do right now, if we go back to the program, if you kind of notice a pretty like standardized design pattern is to have some sort of hover color. So when the mouse is over the button, we want the button to kind of indicate that the mouse is actually on it by kind of changing the color of the button. Let's see where so the way to do this is very simple. Since the clay layout is being reconfigured each frame, we can kind of just do it inline here. And there's a useful function here called clay hovered. So this tells if the element, this element, is being hovered or not, returning true or false. So if it is hovered, we want the color button hover. If it's not hovered, we just want the button color, like so. So using a, I don't remember what it's called, turn, something turn, turnator or something, I'm not sure. But we can do that, and now if we mouse over, we can see that the button is being kind of signifies that we are actually hovering the button. Cool. So say we want to create more buttons, then the thing we will do here is just copy paste this like this. So this gives us 3 buttons, but I found this to be, this creates a lot of clutter for something that is just copy paste. For the majority of the things stay the same. So what I did is that I created a function up here that builds the button for us. And I call this button, this function button element. And what we do is that we just copy paste this code into here. And then we can call this function in here to render the button. So if we do that and we build, we get the same thing. So now it's just inside a function. And the upside of this is that the function can then take in the things that should vary with each button. And the things that will kind of vary is the ID. So this string here will be changed between each button. The text, of course, will be altered between each button. Big S clay string. So now we can just kind of feed this in here, ID, and instead of doing this, we can just give it the text. So now this will complain and we can kind of pass in. So let's do the actual thing we want. Let me bring up the design. So let's do all of these buttons now. So power on, power thrusters, collect, and emergency shutdown. ID for this one will be power on button, and the text will be power on for now. And this expects a clay string, so we use the macro clay string to convert it from const char to clay string. And we kind of do this 4 times. So power thrusters, so power thrusters, and this will be power thrusters. Collect samples, so collect samples, and the text will be collect samples. And the last button, emergency shutdown. Emergency shutdown button. Cool. So if you run this now, we have 4 buttons with all have different IDs and they all have different texts, but they all operate the same. They have this hover, they have the same color, same layout configuration. And the reason that they are stacked like this, top to bottom, is of course because the sidebar has specified layout direction top to bottom. We could change this to be left to right, and let's see how this looks. Yeah. So you can see it's sort of coming together with the layout and the child elements and all of that jazz. So let's keep going. So right now, if you click the button, nothing happens. There's nothing hooked up to the interaction. So what we want to do is, let's see, in here in the element for the rectangle, we can pass in something called clay on hover, which is it's a void function. Takes in some arguments. The first argument we can check actually. So the first argument is a function pointer to something that takes in an element ID, a pointer info, and user data. And the second argument is the user data. So this is a very common pattern when doing UI work. You kind of you create something, you create a button, you pass in a callback, and you can also pass in some arbitrary data. In this case, it's an int pointer, but this is sort of the same as doing like void pointer. It's just a pointer to something in memory. Yeah. So first is the function, so handle button interaction. We call this function. We haven't created this function yet, so and the second argument will be what? Right now, let's pass null, but we will pass some data into this callback later on. Something wrong? Yeah, we have to move this parenthesis down. It's here. Cool. So let's create the button callback. I will put a comment here, just kind of separating this. So void handle button interaction, and the first argument was the clay element ID, which will be unused, so I put the underscore here. And the second argument is the clay pointer data. Let's call it pointer info. And the third argument is int pointer t, called user data. Cool. So what you can do here, if you, right now, if we print something here. Let's say button interaction. Let's print that and run. So what do we expect here? Yeah, it's complaining about this. So let's do int pointer t0. Yeah, it's passing nothing, 0 address to the thing. So now if I hover, you can see it starts spitting out button interaction. As soon as I hover any function, any button, it starts printing. And that's because that's how it's designed. Clay on hover calls this callback whenever the mouse is hovering over the element. But we want, of course, only on the press. So what we can do is instead do pointer info dot, let's see, what was it again? State. So this state, you can check. This state has a couple of things. It's either, we can either use pressed or press this frame. I'm going to do press this frame. I'm not entirely sure about the difference between these two. Maybe this one is from the last frame, from the last like layout loop, and this one is from this one. So it depends on how you structure your program. I'm guessing, but we're going to use this. So was the mouse button pressed this frame? In that case, let's print button was pressed. And new line. And let's see how this looks. So now nothing is printed when I hover, but if I press, nothing happens. And why is that? Let's see, did we do anything wrong? Yeah, oh. So classic mistake, this should be 2 equals compare. So now if I press, yeah, so it's calling the callback and it's checking was the pointer pressed this frame. Yes, then we print. Cool. So now another problem kind of arises. How do we actually make sure that each button has their own kind of callback, like their own logic attached? So there's a couple of ways to do this. The way that I'm going to do it is pass a third argument here, and this argument will be a function pointer. So each call button element can pass in a function pointer here. So this, for example, will be power on button. This will be a function we create. It will get passed into button element, and then we can pass it as user data into the clay callback. So let's do that. I'm going to type def so we don't have to type out the ugly function pointer. Each time, let me just see. Yeah, so we can see. So the way you do this in C is that you do void, and inside of here it's a pointer to a function, or the type name will be button callback, and the arguments is nothing, so void. You could do this, but this is common C to just pass void into the argument parameter list. I'm not sure where this comes from. Maybe someone in the comments know. Like here, for example, it's just something I've seen. It's pretty common in C programs. So the function pointer here will then, of course, be the type will be, as we just created, the button callback. And in here we pass it, instead of 0 we pass the callback. So we're just casting, as I said, casting a void star, a void pointer to an int pointer is, that's totally fine. They're interchangeable. And then in here we can from the int pointer we can then kind of extract our button callback by doing this. So button callback will be user data, and just make sure that it's not null referenced. So we do if cb if it's defined, or if it's an invalid non-null address, we can call this cb. Cool. So passing in user data, and user data is the callback. We convert it to our button callback and we call it. Which again, button callback is just a void function pointer. So down here, we can start passing in our callbacks. So let's just type this out. So power thrusters button collect samples button and emergency shutdown button. Cool. And if we can I do this perhaps? No, let's do this. So copying all of these up to here. Copy, so now we have them here, and we can do this will be void, and they will take in nothing like this. Create some space for them. Cool. And let's go into this. Let's do one, for example, in here, power on button. Let's print power on. And let's do the second one as well, just to see that it works. So printf power thrusters. Cool. Again, so our function button element, the third argument is the callback, so it's a void function with no arguments, power on button, which in turn gets passed into the clay on hover as an int pointer t, as the user data into this. And when this gets called, it receives the user data and we cast it to button callback, and then we call it. Yeah, so a lot of things kind of being passed around, but hopefully this makes sense. Okay, so if we run this now and we press power on function gets called, and we press power thrusters gets called. So now they have their each unique callback. That's very good. That's very good. So let's also create the buttons on the right sidebar. I'm just going to copy paste these in for you here. So this will be init the send button, and this will be init manual control button. So we need to, once again, we need to define these two functions here. So let's do that. Copy them, go up to here, and let's, like that, void, boom, void, like that. Cool. So let's make sure that they are placed correctly. Cool. So that's it for buttons, or at least these buttons, these text buttons. Now moving on, we also want to create buttons that contain images. So same concept, just a rectangle, and inside we have an image instead of text. So let me show you. I have these images here. Let me go up, and I have saved them to resources. Let me just explore.exe, explorer.exe. So arrow left, arrow right, arrow up, kind of describes these three. And they look like this. And all I did was open up GIMP, and on a transparent, like I think an 80 by 80 rectangle, I draw in the orange arrow. So they all have the same size, which is good, makes our life much easier. They have the size of 80 by 80 pixels and a bit depth of 32. I will put this button up on the GitHub, so you can get these buttons through the GitHub project, or you can make them yourself, doesn't matter. So let's see. So let's begin by loading in the textures. So this will be a Raylib texture, and we will have 3 of them. So right arrow texture, and we will have left arrow texture, and we will have up arrow texture. And we will also define the size, so arrow image size will be 80 pixels. And let's see, so actually loading the images, let's go down to main here, and let's do it right after the fonts. So right arrow texture will be so we can do load image, which is a Raylib function from resources, and then arrow right.png. But the problem is that load image actually spits out an image, just raw data. If we go into this, it contains just the width, the height, the format, and just the raw kind of image data. But we want texture, so what we can do is load texture from image, which is another Raylib function, like so. And we can do the exact same for the left arrow texture, and we can do the exact same for the up arrow texture. Cool. So with these elements loaded, let's go into the layout code, and let's do, so the buttons will exist on the right sidebar, so sidebar 2. And let's just start by just kind of creating, as we did before, this inline the button here. So open up new, called clay ID, arrow button, open up some brackets, and first, I should put this here, define the layout. This we will do inline, and the layout will be the sizing. It will be sizing fixed, so 90, just add some padding from the 80 pixel width of the actual image. Same goes for the Y, or the height, 90. Cool. After, that's it for the layout actually. And then we want the rectangle. The rectangle will have a color, of course. And just as before, we will do clay hovered. If it's hovered, we do color button hover. If it's not hovered, we do color button. And we also will do, just as before, corner radius, which will be 80 or 8 pixels, 8 pixels, 8 pixels. And the last one, of course, just as before, we will have clay on hover, kind of clay handle button interaction, And for now, let's do int pointer equals 0. Now we have fricked something up, it looks like. Let's see, what did we mess up here? It's complaining. Int point, oh shit, int pointer t, of course. Cool. So if we kind of, let's see, let's start off by, let me just copy in the images. Yeah, I'm gonna remove my current resources map folder, sorry, map, that's the Swedish word. And then we will copy the one I have saved that contains the images into here. Yeah, so now I have the images inside the resources folder. And then I'm going to build, I will run make, and I will run the program. So now we haven't done any images or texts or nothing. So we just have a 90 by 90 rectangle that has the on hover effect and the button callback. Nothing gets printed because I just point 0. So nothing will be actually executed. Let's actually add in the image. Let's do this under the rectangle. So images are very simple. We just do clay image. And we pass in the source dimensions, which for us will be arrow image size, arrow image size. After the source dimensions, you pass in the actual image data. And for this, we can put the address to the, let's do the up arrow texture. So you give the pointer to, or the address of the image up arrow texture. And if we have a look in the clay renderer Raylib, let's see, image. Here it converts the image data which we pass back to a texture to the, and then it draws the texture using that image data. So that's why we can do it like this here. So let's do make and let's run. Awesome. So super simple. We have the image inside of the button. So just as before, let's create an actual function so we can reuse this. And I'm going to do it like copy paste. So this function, similar to the button element, takes in an ID, and instead of string we take in a texture instead, and again the button callback. So that down here, if we remove this code, we can now do button arrow button element ID. Let's do arrow button up, arrow button up, and the texture will be the address of up arrow texture, and the callback, let's do up arrow button. So we need to define up arrow button. Sorry, I'm getting Slack notifications. Let me just turn these off. Quit. I'm not working today. I'm starting work tomorrow, actually. like so. So now arrow button element works since we have defined up arrow button, we have a texture and the ID. So if we press this, up arrow gets called. Power on, power thrusters, arrow up. Cool. So let's see how we should lay. So we want the arrow buttons to kind of lay out like this. So the first center, and then we do center but with some kind of arbitrary padding right here. So let's do that. What we can do, let's see, does this one have child alignment? No, it doesn't. So let's add dot child alignment. So alignment for X will be clay align X center, and for Y let's put 0, which I guess will be align Y top. Yeah. So center on X and top to bottom on the Y. Cool. So this first button looks okay. So how do we get these other two buttons to line up? Because if I do this, they will just end up like on top of each other. And the way we do that is by creating another parent element. I will just kind of copy paste this for you just to simplify, but I will show you the entire code. I did it twice. So arrow bottom row is the ID of this element, and the layout direction now, instead of being top to bottom, will be left to right. And I will just let this grow to whatever size, and the height will be fixed to 100. And once again we align the children to be center X, and the gap I have set to this arbitrary value. I put it at 78 pixels for now. Yeah, so inside of here we can put our two other arrow buttons. So that will first be arrow button left and then arrow button right. So this will be left arrow texture and this will be right arrow texture. And of course we will have to do the callbacks, left arrow button and right arrow button. Go up to our callbacks and define them. So left arrow button and right arrow button. Just put this. So, yeah. Cool. Let's see how this looks. Awesome. Super cool. Yeah, so we have a problem. You see that when I hover only the last element, they all get lit up. Why is that? You might wonder. That is because I made a mistake of giving them probably the same ID. Let me check. I didn't, but let's check the logs just to make sure that we don't have any errors. That's interesting. Why are they actually getting the same? Sorry, I'm just looking at my reference code. Maybe you can solve this on your own while I kind of look through. Yeah, what what I think we will need here is the error callback. I'm using the old clay version still on this commit. So let me just fix this right quick. Let me remove clay.h and remove the Raylib folder. Sorry, rmrf Raylib. Cool. And let's go into clay. And let's copy clay.h to Mars. And let's copy the Raylib renderers / Raylib to Mars control panel. Cool. And now this will complain since we need to pass the. So this you should already have in your code, but I'm adding it back in like so, and then we go back to Mars, we go into build, we make, and we run. So we get the error, an element with this ID was previously declared during this layout. So it's complaining here for some reason. Let's see if it stops complaining if I comment this out. It does. And if I comment this one back in, it complains. So for some reason the IDs are being passed in as the same here. And I'm wondering why. Why is it doing like this? What I will do, just to kind of make sure that this isn't, I will put these 3 variables here. So static, so compile time, arrow right, arrow left, arrow button, const char, and down here I will use these variables here instead of the passing the string. So arrow left button ID and arrow up button ID, and let's see if it makes things. Yeah, so now it works. That's weird. I have no idea right now why this is the case, but let's just follow what works. So using the defined static const char that we put up here instead of just typing out the string in line here. Now it seems to work. Cool. So nothing happens here because I haven't put anything in the callback, but if I were to put like a printf left arrow, it would print. Yeah. So that's it, I think. Yeah, that's it for all the buttons. Let's look at the UI again. So now we have our basically our entire layout or UI done. We have the buttons, we have the title, the log. There are callbacks for the various buttons. So the next thing we could do now is just start working on the center part. So if you go back to the kind of list that we have, so we have rendering text element, we have done this in the last. We have created clickable buttons. Oh, that's ugly. So the next thing to do is kind of this one. Creating some kind of logic thing, some game here, and then coupling our UI to that game. And following that, we can make sure that the UI updates according to the game. So perhaps this power on button, perhaps the text will change. If you press power on, the text should be updated. to power off according to the game state. Perhaps some buttons will be locked away if you aren't currently able to perform those tasks. And also we could add, we could make this actual log respond to the actions that are performed in the UI. So for example, power on should power on some kind of ship, and then when the ship is powered on, it will send out to the log that power on has been triggered. So kind of coupling together all the various parts of the UI. Yeah, but I think the progress has been very good. With this kind of setup, I think you should be able to create any kind of basic UI on your own. And hopefully I have shown how easy it is to work with this framework. Especially when you have Raylib as the backend renderer. Like creating text and images is ridiculously easy. Especially when you remember, if you remember that all of this is done in C, which is super cool. If you haven't really done any other kind of C programming before, achieving the look that we have right now in the UI, with only, let's see how many lines of code we have 261 total lines of like code that we have written. It's kind of amazing to me how simple it is. Alright, so we have been going for 50 minutes, so I will end here, and hopefully if you have any questions or any problems, comment them down below. Otherwise, good luck with your own program, and I will see you in the next part. Bye bye.